Welcome, everyone, to the Voice of Meaning. This is a very, very special edition, and I'm very, very honored to be chatting with SARINA FARB. If you haven't heard of her, I believe you'll someday hear of her. She's an activist, amazingly active activist living in the Midwest, and she's an activist for animal rights and vegan lifestyle and all these wonderful things. So, how are you, Serena?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on for this conversation.
Very good. And Serena, you have a website. It's called Vegan from Birth. Is
Bornvegan.org.
Born Vegan. Okay, and I will hyperlink that. So you were your parents then were vegan. Is that correct?
Yes, my mom has a very fascinating story. But she went vegan a couple years before I was born and knew that she wanted to have children and that she wanted to raise any children she had vegan from conception, really, as well. And my dad was not vegan when they met and got married, but she basically asked him if he would agree to raise any future kids they had vegan and keep the home vegan and set that example in front of us. And then he was also vegan by the time I was a couple months old. Um, After hearing all of her stories and reasons why.
So, did you go to public schools when you grew up?
A little bit. I did a lot of different things. I homeschooled on and off. I went to Waldorf school, Montessori school, and then my public school. I went a little bit in sixth grade to public school briefly, and then I did most of my high school years part-time at a public school.
Okay. Were you ostracized? You probably went to lunch with a lot different food than the other kids were eating.
That I did. I had a lot of interesting experiences. Ostracized maybe isn't exactly the right word, but I was very loud and proud about my veganism. So it's hard to say what was just because I had different food and what was because I was trying to tell everyone about veganism all the time. Um, but in sixth grade, I was attending a Montessori school actually. And I joke that I turned like half the class vegetarian and the other class, half of the class hated me. Um, and that's because I would do things like bring flyers to school with me. And literally, while I was eating lunch at a table with other kids, I would open up like a graphic Why Vegan flyer that showed like a picture of a slaughterhouse and be like, that hot dog you're eating, didn't you know that came from a pig like this? Um, and I don't necessarily recommend those tactics today, but that was what 12-year-old me did. And so it definitely made some enemies. It definitely got some pushback. I had conflicts with my teacher in that particular year in school as well. Um, and yeah, it definitely brought about a lot of interesting conversations.
Okay. And as far as your your parents and your social life, do you think that suffered because of that?
Um, in some ways, yes. I mean, I think I was different and we lived very differently. And it wasn't just the being vegan. We also, did some homeschooling, lived out in the country. We didn't have TV at home, so I didn't like watch TV shows either. So, I felt very different than a lot of the other kids that I was around. I also did competitive gymnastics. So even when I was homeschooling, I was at the gym. Um, 3 or 4 hours, multiple days a week. And so that was a big part of my social network for, 4 or 5 years. And I I was outspoken in a lot of those environments too. But I always did feel a little bit different than most of the kids kind of living a more mainstream life. But I'm very grateful for it because I think especially in the early 90s the mid 90s and early 2000s, there was so much emphasis on fitting in and sameness and in the long run, our culture and our world is made up of people with all kinds of different backgrounds and cultures and perspectives and experiences. And I think it was a great skill for me to learn that it's okay to be different and be proud of it. And we should actually embrace difference and diversity in our communities, and not expect everyone to look the same, eat the same, be the same. Um, and then I also did have a number of specific spaces and communities and places that I could go where I was able to meet more like-minded, friends at that time. Vegan conferences being one of them. And that was definitely kind of a saving grace for me and many times and places when I did struggle to feel like I had like-minded or supportive friends around me.
That's really nice. You shared with me that you grew up going to a vegan conference every summer in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Can you tell us a little bit about that one and why you felt so included in the activities you did that were so fun?
Yeah, so Vegan Summerfest in Johnstown, Pennsylvania has been going on for I think over 40 years, might be over 50 years now. And it's a 4 day kind of, vegan health conference that has lots of speakers, but they also had a kids center where parents could drop their kids off during the day to play with other kids and, go hiking in the woods and do activities while the parents were in lectures and workshops. And that was one of the first places that one, got to meet other children that were vegan or raised vegan from birth, including the Barnett family who run Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. I met their kids there who were some of the first other, you know, um, lifelong vegans I knew. And then it was also this one time for 4 days where I got to be normal and didn't have to ask, oh, is that vegan and what's in that? I could just assume that the snacks being fed to all the kids were vegan. And so, yeah, so I kind of say like it was this one time where I got to fit in and be normal and see what it was like for other people that weren't doing things so differently than the culture and world around them. And it also was very empowering then the rest of the year because I stayed in touch with many of the friends that I met there. And so then when I was in school or having difficulties, I had pen pals or people who I could call on the phone and relate my struggles of being vegan in a non-vegan world to, even outside of that conference and environment.
Wonderful. And I know that you're planning, it's called Thrive Alive Vegan Fest near Kansas City this fall. Would you like to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up attending Vegan Summerfest. I've been, over 25 years to that festival or a conference, more of a conference, and I speak there now. And then I also have gone on to attend another similar festival called the Woodstock Fruit Festival. That's a raw vegan fruit festival. And many other festivals on other topics, festivals, conferences. The Animal Rights Conference. I've been to like a whole variety of different events. And every time I would, attend these, I kind of just had this vision of like, ooh, if I ever put on something, I would do this, or I would take this element of this one that I love and this element of this one, and here's what I would do. And after thinking about this for a number of years, I teamed up with a friend of mine who I met at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, actually, and we kind of pooled our ideas together to create Thrive Alive Vegan Fest, which has several kind of key components to it. One being similar to Vegan Summerfest, it will have speakers and workshops, some amazing motivational, educational, plant-based gut health expert dietitians, and a nutritional biochemist, Cyrus Kambata, who co-founded Mastering Diabetes. So we'll definitely be covering like the lifestyle medicine basics as well as a broader holistic vegan emphasis. So we'll have animal rights activists and speakers there, sustainability experts, all giving workshops. But then the other big element is that looking around at what's going on in the world and also seeing how many people struggle to find community, particularly on, related to veganism or finding people who support your values and, visions for the world. And then also the lack of truly fun and inclusive spaces and festivals that are also vegan. So I've been to a number of like spirituality, spiritual music festivals, transformational music festivals, hippie events, and I love them, but there's always a little piece of me that feels like there's something a little hypocritical when I hear people, on stage singing about peace and love for the world, and then the food being served is, the body parts of dead animals. Um, and so I also wanted to kind of bring in some elements of the hippie music and spirituality festivals I've been to, but have them actually align. So if we're talking about peace and justice and sustainability on Earth, that has to include all beings, and we need to live and walk the talk. Um, and then the other element of that is, in this world right now and seeing people struggling with community, I also know a number of people who have eaten plant-based, gone vegan or plant-based, and now no longer are. And that number is increasing all the time. Like the number of ex-vegans or people who tried it and couldn't stick with it. And from my observations and talking to people, I think one of the often overlooked biggest factors in this is community. We are communal beings and we crave connection. We do crave fitting in and being part of a community. We don't want to be isolated. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be different than our peer network. And too many people, I think, don't have enough vegan support and community in their lives. Places where they can fit in and be normal. And there's so much propaganda in the world that kind of, would make even a strong, confident person question their beliefs sometimes if you're not careful of this. And so Thrive Alive Vegan Fest is a combination of all these things. It's part educational vegan conference, it's part transformational music festival and camp out in the woods and nature, and it's part just a fun, vegan, supportive community environment where, we expect hundreds of people are going to come. They're going to be able to eat together in a dining hall, kind of like adult, family friendly vegan summer camp. And we're going to have, summer camp games, swimming, hiking, boating, in addition to the lectures, workshops, yoga, fitness classes. And then we're going to have evening main stage performances with vegan musicians. So we can have dance parties and sing and dance together under the stars. Um, and I really expect that people are going to walk in and be able to not know anyone and walk out with a whole new community of lifelong best friends that are going to share their values and support and empower them and each other to live their happiest, healthiest life.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Sarina. And hopefully people will be bringing their children and start a tradition similar to what you were brought up doing.
Absolutely. We
I
will be
think.
having a kids' corner. It is a family-friendly event. There's housing options ranging from tent camping to cabins to private suites, something for everybody.
Okay. Well, I see that you're quite young, but you've already um, made your mark as a speaker. Um, and tell me about your vision for your future and your career and possibly, 50 years from now when you might be retiring or not retiring. What's your vision for the future and your future?
It changes all the time, but right now, kind of going off of the festival, my passion is really on the community building aspect. I I've done a lot of the speaking, I've done a lot of the protesting, sign holding, yelling into a megaphone. Um, and I feel like I'm currently at a stage where I feel more called to I guess I'm getting a little bit tired of angrily beating my head against the wall and feeling like there's so much resistance in the world to the messages that I put out. And I am feeling called right now to speak more from a place of love and compassion. Not that the other isn't, but to more just create a new and better alternative than try to fight the other. So I'm leaning more into the organizing community events and spaces that uplift and support and inspire, um, and that provide that connection and authentic, deep relations with other people. I think something else I've become passionate about is there's so much hate and division in the world. And I think we need to be having more conversations. We need to be seeing the humanity in each other and get good at listening and understanding where people are coming from, why they're still doing what they're doing or not doing. Um, so that's kind of my current passion, and so that's organizing events and this festival. And I really want to do more on the personal development and coaching side of things. So rather than, trying to convince people they should be changing their diet, which of course I still think they should, finding and connecting with the people that are open-minded and want that and don't know how to do that. The people that already want the information I have and need help kind of taking the next steps, changing their lives, creating better habits, cutting out the animals from their diet and lifestyle, and transforming their own life to feel better, more confident, and happy and healthy as a vegan. So I'm following all of that right now, and I'm just kind of open to what the world needs and how that matches with what I'm passionate about. And I'm sure I will still be doing something related to all of this in 50 years.
That's wonderful. Um, I don't think I'll be around to see you in 50 years, but because of my change to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, I believe I'm going to be around a lot longer than what my original destiny was. Um, you're a very, very eloquent speaker. Did you have much training in school, and um, how did you achieve this, or were you born that way?
I have always liked public speaking, even when I was 3 or 4 years old and my family came back from Vegan Summerfest, and then we had like a local vegan potluck where my parents were, you know, had not even a real stage, but they would get up and make announcements and were sharing about the conference. I think 3 or 4 year old me was like, I want to get up and say something. So I've always loved public speaking. And then I competed in science fairs all through high school, which involved a lot of presenting research in a compelling and convincing way to judges. And then I also did competitive policy debate for 3 years as well. So I definitely, and then I taught high school, which people don't often think of that as like, being teaching or being, speaking per se, but it is a lot. You're lecturing to a class and having to kind of think and talk on your feet. So I have had a decent amount of experience, interest, and training with it.
I'm curious, what subject did you teach in high school?
Chemistry and environmental science.
Wow. Um, I would have loved to have you as a teacher. So, any, we're going to keep this short and sweet because I'm going to put in a lot of links to where people can find you and a lot of incredible talks. Any thoughts? Imagine that someday 1 million people are going to be watching this interview or more. What would you like to share with those 1 million people?
It's a good question. Um, I mean, what's coming to mind right now is think for yourself, think critically. There is so much propaganda in the world from corporations and companies with vested interests in convincing you of things, whether that is that, drugs and surgeries are the only solution for healthcare issues, or that it's normal and natural and we have to eat meat for protein or drink cow's milk for strong bones. Um, there's those are just barely scratching the surface. And even beyond diet and lifestyle, there are so many corporations and governments for that matter too. Like there's all these forces out there that want us to think and act and behave a certain way and do things mostly driven by profit. And if we're not aware of that and aware that that is the world and air that we are breathing on a daily basis, then that's a scary place to be and we can be easily duped. And so I think a message that I'm really passionate about and I think everyone should think about is think for yourself, think critically, and don't just accept, everything around you at face value. And especially, we don't know where the world's going with AI and all these new technologies, but that's going to be an even bigger deal because now you can have a new level of fake videos and photos on the internet that if you're not asking, where did that come from? Who created it? Is this real? We could have whole, world events unfold over things that aren't real. So think for yourself, ask the hard questions, think critically, and don't accept propaganda or information at face value.
I love that. As a matter of fact, I think I'll title this interview, Think for Yourself, Ask the Hard Questions. That's so, so true. Thank you so much, Sarina. I really appreciate your time and wish you the greatest success in your enterprises. I have a feeling the world's going to hear a lot from you and keep up the good work.
Well, thank
So,
you so
yeah.
much.
So
And
thank you for watching The Voice of Meaning. If you like this interview, please subscribe and share, and also connect with Sarina in any way you feel that would be a good idea. Okay.